Risk Insights has found that over 2,700 women have been killed as a result of gender-based violence since 2000. Prior to the pandemic, femicide in South Africa was 5 times higher than the global average, and the female interpersonal violence death rate was the 4th highest out of 183 countries listed by the World Health Organization in 2016. Now, research done by Statistics South Africa shows that 1 in 5 South African women older than 18 have experienced physical violence by a partner. Joining us tonight, PowerHouse Development Services Founder, Advocate Boniswa Mzimba, and human rights and gender activist Minyuku. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time tonight. Of course, the country, rightfully so, is reeling from the ongoing gruesome killings of women in this country. And the reality is that it just doesn't seem to stop. And Advocate Boniswa, when we look at it, it doesn't seem that there's a way of actually truly dealing with the scourge. We've known about it for some time. The president declared it a pandemic even before we came into COVID-19. Under COVID, he said it was the 2nd pandemic that this country has been dealing with. But seemingly, it just hasn't had the appropriate attention, nor has it had the appropriate resources.
Good evening, Sis Kathy, and good evening to the listeners of Newzroom Afrika. You are so right. Gender-based violence has been defined correctly so as a pandemic, the 2nd pandemic that we are facing as a country. You are also right that it has not been well-resourced. It has not been well-resourced because we have not really thought out how to resource it, how to institutionalize it in terms of how we have institutionalized and dealt, dare I say, COVID-19. If we are going to define it as a pandemic like COVID-19, we should also resource it and institutionalize it like COVID-19.
Ricky, one just, struggles to find the words. What do you say to families that tonight, across this country, are reeling from the killings of their daughters, are trying to make sense of it, but seemingly have no clear answers?
Good evening, Kathy, and good evening to your viewers. It's impossible to find the words to speak to such families. It's impossible to give comfort because we have known about this situation for so long. There have been promises for so long. Very recently, on the 9th of August, the president talked about all that has been done. But the truth about it is we as a country have been investing in the after effects of gender-based violence. We invest in how to react to gender-based violence. We don't invest in how to stop gender-based violence. So we need to be looking far more at the preventative work and not at how do we comfort the families now that the occurrence has happened.
And that's part of the problem that we're confronted with today, that not only are we looking at responding to the results of this violence, but more often than not, in these conversations that address whether it's the position of women in abusive relationships, the responsibility continues in our society to be placed on women to somehow not be in situations where they can get killed. Advocate Boniswa?
Yes, Sis Kathy. Sis Ricky is so right, and you're also so right. We seem to be valuing responding to these instances and not preventing them. It is not the duty of women to protect themselves, but it is the duty of everyone. It is not the duty of these girls, the young girls that we are seeing being slaughtered in our country, to find safe spaces for themselves and safe ways of living their lives. It is our duty, and all of us, and dare I say, Sis Kathy, what bothers me is that these messages are so full of hypocrisy, and they are led by the very same people that are perpetrators themselves. And so women and girls find it difficult to even, protect themselves against them, because they are all over. They are saying the right things. They are with us in all these events that we are having, and they are in the institutions, and they are all over. They are masked. They are saying the right things. And when women speak, it is very difficult to force through the very same perpetrators that we find around us. Women should not feel that it is their duty to protect themselves. Within families, we see it in the work that I do, for example, that the very same family that is supposed to be protecting a woman or a gay girl child is the same family that perpetrates the same abuse against a woman or a child in that particular family.
And yet the situation, Ricky, unfortunately, is that even though it shouldn't be the responsibility of women to talk about, to shoulder the burden of protecting themselves, that is the conversation that many women have to have. That is the conversation that women have to have when they leave their homes, when they want to go for a run by themselves, when they want to stay out too late. Those considerations that women in this country have to make is, well, is my decision not going to endanger my life? How do we fundamentally change that? Ricky?
Thanks, Kathy. And I think I want to start by saying you are absolutely right. There is no woman or girl child in this country that doesn't have to think carefully about everything they choose to do on a daily basis. And what that means is that there is no freedom. It's not yet uhuru for women and girl children in this country. There's no freedom to do the things that we want to do the things that we aspire to do. We're always having to think about our safety. But I think if we want to talk about how we can move forward, one of the things that is important is to understand that this fight is everybody's fight. Is to understand that it's not the activists' fight. It's not the young students who go out on the streets fight. For me, in my work that I do, I find it very difficult that a lot of people don't feel that we should all be fighting. And part of that fight is not just how do we change the narratives, how do we change the way that we understand ourselves as society, is also recognizing that women are creators of those same narratives in and of themselves. As mothers, we are telling our children that no, we're telling our girl children how they must dress. In this instance, you must dress this way. In this instance, you must dress that way. But are we also doing the work of talking to them about why that is wrong? Are we doing the work of talking to our boy children about women are not your belongings? Women are not yours for the taking. So we all need to contribute as a society. And I think that when we understand that everyone has a role to play in ending gender-based violence, everyone should be speaking up. Every time you see an incident, you hear an incident, you should be stepping forward. That is the only way that we as a society can put an end to this pandemic, this scourge in our society, is if it becomes intolerable for every single one of us.
One of the things that we knew coming out of at least the first and second waves of COVID-19 in this country, when the research came out, was the extent of abuse and violence that women had been subjected to under the COVID-19 pandemic. When you look at the latest figures, there's no reason to believe that the situation where violence against women is actually changing. What do we need in this moment, Advocate Mzimba? What do we need in this moment? One actually even lacks the language, to help us move forward. Can we even begin to move forward when we haven't fully comprehended what this moment means and where we are as a society?
Yes, Ms. Kathy. As we are having this discussion, it is something that has happened and has been happening over the years. So we know that we have a country that has got a psyche that is wrong. We know the social determinants of gender-based violence. It is doing something about them. As I had initially said, the messaging is right, but the people behind the message have got to be the same people that carry the same pain of the victims or of the pain of women in their fight and their struggle against freedom from being violated just on the basis of being a woman in the first instance. The messaging is right, but it is the resources behind that message that are lacking, and the people that are driving the responses to this pandemic of gender-based violence. I've been asking myself the same question: what to do? What do we do? Unless we adopt the same attitude, as I had initially said about gender-based violence, the same attitude which says that we have got to treat it for what it is. We must not speak about gender violence in a language that pleases other people. We must not be afraid to say what it is. We must not be afraid to point out who is behind it. We must not be afraid to be labeled, you know, as particularly as people that are speaking up, as the victims. You know, one of the things that is causing gender-based violence to be so succinct, it is because women in particular are afraid to speak up. And when they do speak up, they get, you know, labeled, they get threatened. The support for them is not enough. And so there is just so much that we need to do around not the messaging, but the resourcing, formalizing the response, structuring the response, starting with each and every one of us, Kathy. What is it that I, as Advocate Boniswa Mzimba, what am I doing about it? What is the next person doing about it? What is my family doing about it? What is my office doing about it? What is this institution that I'm in, what is it doing about it? What is the shop owner doing about it? What is the business owner doing about it? Are we allowing this thing to happen in our institutions around us? Because that is exactly what is happening. We are not owning it. We are making it everybody's business except the people that, you know, we are supposed to be working together in dealing with it. I mean, I have seen women, for example, I'm not even going to talk about the women from the rural areas that I am very passionate about, and in whose behalf I really bleed when we speak about the issue of gender-based violence. Sure. The very same educated women. You find that the very same educated women find themselves in settings where they are themselves unable to point it out for fear of so many other things that will happen to them.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, and the examples of these women, you know, they stay with us every single day, and they remind us of just how great a fight the women of this country are in. Human rights and gender equality activist Ricky Minyuku and advocate Boniswa Mzimba from PowerHouse Development Services, let me thank you both for your time tonight.